man, it has been a minute since I've had a chapter that had me like personally stressed. So essentially, it was obviously set over the last couple chapters that it wasn't as like unfairly super one-sided between the Erasion Saints and the Erasion Sex. Clearly, there is there's a combination of the power matchups and how each of their abilities are obviously going to work. I mean, that's always going to be a general case as long as characters are relevant to each other. But we did see ultimately that it's not like the Erasion Sex are just so disgustingly beyond them that it's not comparable. It's just like they're generally stronger, but their powers seemingly just were much better. You know, obviously, like Angel's like a good example. It's like she's not using her celestial spirit magic. She's not using that coin magic she had. I was hoping she would pull out the coins and do that as like a last resort. Like she still had that, but she's like, I only use this just in case. But she just seemed to get hard countered. I mean, she does all these feather and minion attacks, and Damon just melts them. But as we saw with Racer and Cobra, there's still a chance for them to win. It's just like they have to pretty much pull out every single thing that they have, and they have to fight desperately for a win. They have to be going to the nail in order to walk out of there with a W, which I liked. I thought that was actually really cool, and it made a lot of sense for their general area. Like Cobra, it's not like Cobra is like, oh, I bought this trump card thing, but I had to do blah blah blah. He's like, no, just come in. I'm gonna go all out, and I'm going to do some crazy moves and just do what I can essentially in order to get this win. And that's kind of what Racer did as well. As Racer was like doing stuff like biting Bird and stuff, and just doing whatever he can to. My dog's stressed about it too. In order to get damage on him and get hits. To me, like the only thing I was more so worried about was something like Midnight being able to Midnight beating Zero was the one that I was most worried about, because if Zero lost, it would be more of like the period between Zero's loss and then finding out what the results of that would be is what I was more like, oh gosh, this is going to be rough. Because to me, if Zero was brought back and he was going to be used as essentially a character closer for Midnight to get some development for the Erasion Saints members, get some more stuff and information from what we didn't have the last time, because Cobra just killed Brain before Zero even got up. So when you look at it right now, it's like, okay, well, if his character was brought back, there has to be a reason why he's gonna lose in the first general expanse of when they're gonna the Erasion Sex members are gonna be fighting. Because to me, it was like either he's going to come back and he's going to be a longer running character for this arc and Ferris's side, or he's going to be used to introduce other characters who have died and have been turned into demons from points in the story. So it's like, to me, it was like, okay, well, if Hades comes back after Zero is defeated, that'd be a logical reason of why okay, I brought this guy back, and it's just a build up of like, oh, I could do this, and then the reveal later. But Zero ended up pulling a victory in this, which I was very happy about, because I actually really like Zero. I think Zero's character is really cool. And out of the Balam Alliance leaders, he was the one that needs the most time out, because he was really only in the series for a handful of chapters. And Zero's one of those characters where he's not trying to be like, yeah, let me develop and do all these nice things to kind of show you the different sides of my character. No, he's a lunatic. He's a crazy psychopath who just wants to destroy and fight. And when you have characters like that fit into that, again, this kind of just lunatic berserker style, it's either they just are that because you can't think of anything, or it's like if you push and dedicate towards that theme, those characters can be very fun and they're very entertaining. But I just didn't see what Midnight was really gonna do here, because his basic stuff, he's using Spiral Pain and Reflector for for defense. But Brain and Zero, it made so much sense to me when he's like, I'm the one that taught you that magic, because, Brain and Zero, primarily Brain, but Zero obviously had to be involved in some way, shape, or form. I'm curious if, I feel like this chapter made it very clear that Brain and Zero have a level of awareness when the other one is in control. But it's like, he's saying he taught you that magic. So it's like, it was hard for me to be, okay, well, how is he going to beat somebody that taught him this, unless he's like, well, you learned it and you're good at it, but I mastered it and took it to another stage kind of thing. But still, Midnight to me was just like, how is he going to do this? He did use Dark Rondo as an enchantment, which I thought was really cool. Just him having enchantments. I enjoy it when characters pull out an ability that is just like a singular aspect. Like whenever a character, whenever a character has stuff like telepathy, it's just like a small little thing in the verse where it's nice to see characters like, oh yeah, I learned this other magic because I figured it'd be useful. Midnight probably did this, and it's like in scenarios where, say, like Urza, when Urza figured out how to get past his magic, he's like, okay, well, I'll just do physical fighting directly. Because it's not like this is going to be the big turnaround against Zero, but it makes sense if he fought somebody that was able to really get around his reflectors abilities of, like, you know, warping magic and physical matter in order to get around him, that he would have a means to just directly go and attack. Because he has other stuff, obviously, like illusions and whatnot, being able to turn invisible. But, I mean, if somebody gets around trick moves like that, you want to have a more direct way of attacking. I think that just makes complete sense. But Zero then just pulled out Genesis Zero. I thought this next bit made a lot of sense. I thought Midnight having a counter where he's like, he essentially creates a opposing version of Genesis Zero where it's just this huge purification ability, which, one, purifying Genesis Zero was cool. Also, it tells me Genesis Zero can't be Zero's main, like, ultimate ability anymore, because one, it's like, if he can be defeated this easily, I don't really think, like, his hype is gonna maintain, but I don't think that's the case, because before it was his ultimate spell, whereas now I feel like this is just like, it's like how Natsu had his Crimson Exploding Flame Blade early, that was his strongest, but now it's, you know, it's one of his better moves generally, but it's still not, like, he can use it and he's got multiple moves above it, and that's where I'm guessing Zero is at now. But I actually liked that the structure of it is it's not just in countering Genesis Zero because it's a purification technique. It also would work on Zero for, like, the black magic aspects and the demon aspects. So it's like hurting him, but in the process, Zero switches with Brain, which I thought was really interesting. One thing to note too, and I didn't bring this up. Let me pull this up actually, because this is not something that I intended to actually talk about, but I want to talk about that actually right now. Is that Zero and Brain's living like the whole magic links, theirs are different, and I don't think I ever noticed that in terms of it mattering, because before I was like, oh well, he had a different set, now it could just be tattoos, like there's a different reason for it. This must, to me, means that maybe there's a third personality now, and that, you know, it's either a third personality or the two of their personalities fuse and makes a third one, or they both exist at the same time, or maybe you get some demon with two heads kind of scenario where it's just like this kind of monstrosity looking guy. Let me pull this up really fast, because this isn't like a crazy thing, but it's still something I think that is noteworthy. Let me pull this up really fast, because I didn't intend to talk about this until just now, because this is just, to me, has to have something of value, because it's not like one thing was off, and you can even see there's like some speed lines on Zero's side when he switches back, that they go into a different formation, which I think is extremely intriguing and tells me that there's more to this character planned than we know of. And again, I think now, if he loses to Gajil, I actually wouldn't mind as much. I'd still hope that if Zero loses, it's, you know, and Zero and Brain defeated, you know, destroyed, we get a lead in again into why the character was brought back. Because I don't think his character was just brought back to be brought back. I personally think that he is going to be used for a segue point into the story. Like I said, with the thing that is interesting about him is he is a demon made from a pre-existing person, kind of like Natsu. So if he is Ferris's first attempt at creating her own E&D, I think it'd be really cool if she either was like doing it with corpses, again, like Zero, you know, Zero and Brain, and then maybe Hades, but she eventually goes to make her own. And this is something I'm going to do a full video on this. I was thinking about this the other day, because the one thing that she has that Zeref doesn't have directly is clearly creating a demon using the flesh of another is better than a natural demon or a regular Therius. And Ferris as a woman, I'd be curious if she could essentially, instead of needing to get a corpse, if she could grow an Aetherius, like, in her uterus, like, actually as a woman. kind of like, because it would also be like almost like an antichrist thing. It's, you know, a baby born without a father. It'd be very intriguing of how like it would set up in the story and how it would go about. But it'd be so cool to see what she could do for this. And then but what I see with Zero and Brain is like their character, I think, is going to segue into something like that, as to where it leads into what exactly Ferris has in a larger scope. Because that's something I think that Ferris logically would have. If she's making demons, then she's going to have some form of masterpiece demon that she's either in the middle of making or she is planning to make. And I think in the middle of making would be really cool, because I think it'd be better if we see the creation of said character. I think it'd be super creepy and trippy if we went down something like that, where you see like, oh, she says something about making a demon. You see like a couple chapter later, she's like suddenly like 8 months, 7, 8 months pregnant or something, and you're just like, what is she doing? And she just, you know, she's just doing some spooky black magic stuff. I think that would fit in with black magic as well, if there's some weird like evil virgin birth kind of thing going up for some antichrist. It'd be spooky. But Brain and Zero switching, I thought was really cool, because it's like Brain is he's way more just knowledgeable in like the weird ways he can use his magic. Obviously, he's more of a tactical, intelligent fighter, and he comes out and he uses uses archive. He says, you know, removing magic with enchantments, Jutsu Shiki, that's like the runes that Freed and the Rune Knights uses. And what I thought was interesting, I thought he just canceled it, but what Midnight says is he used automatic self-destruct runes and then attached it to the magic. So he essentially like took the same thing that that they were using, that Jalal used on himself, as well as was put on Nirvana, and linked it to the spell. Which again is more interesting, because he's essentially putting a break effect. It'd be like if Freed, like the easiest way to think about it, it'd be like if Freed wrote out, did a Jutsu Shiki, and he's like, deactivate, and he put it on a spell. Because that's essentially what he did. Is he applied this self-destructibility to a spell and made the spell just stop. Which again, to me, it just shows that he is moved up in level as a character. If he's able to essentially be switching, like he can switch between just raw all-out assault, and then you get him in like, oh, this character is more of a brawler, he's a berserker, but he's not a smart tactical fighter, and he's like, well, okay, switches places and goes over to Brain, so Brain takes care of that problem. I think that's just really cool, because it still gives him like he has to switch between the spots, but it doesn't seem like there's a cost to it, and he can just do it. I'm curious to know what Godjil's win is going to be in this scenario. But he just nopes over Midnight. He just uses Dark Gravity. I'm going to be honest, when I saw Midnight's eyes all whited out and blood coming out of his mouth, I was like, yes. I don't want Midnight to die, but I did not want Midnight to be the one to beat Zero. I really didn't want that to be the case. Gate goes, snaps his fingers, brings Merity back out, and he's like surprised that she's still alive. And he's like, okay, I'll bring you through the gate one more time. Grabs her, and then all this water shows up. I was not expecting Juvia to show up in this fight at all. I will say that. I didn't expect Juvia just to style up. I will say too, I'm so happy with these matchups, because for one, every single person that showed up is somebody that the people have been wanting to see, that people have been complaining about wanting to see. And I think that one of the things that's very difficult when it comes to pleasing specific fan groups is that it's hard to get characters into spots to where they're going to logically be in the story and be active. I think Merity and Juvia is great, because it gives Juvia a moment that doesn't have to do with Gray, because we know that she has obviously this past with Merity and that her and Merity are friends. So I would love to have Juvia have just a isolated spot. She can mention Gray. She can have some moment of like talking about obviously the past between them. But I'm hoping the focus is going to be on her relationship with Merity, and I really hope that it's not going to peer too much over to Gray. Again, I don't expect Juvia to not mention Gray whatsoever, but I really like that he isn't involved here, and it's in her own character like area, but it's not to what you would expect. And I think that's really good. It'd be like if she got a moment with Godjil or Kana again, somewhere where it's in Juvia's wheelhouse, but it isn't. It's still relevant to what's going on. It's not just giving her something. So I thought this was really cool. And Juvia's always been clearly very strong. It's just like she doesn't have Juvia. For another character example, is like Bacchus. Bacchus is clearly very strong. He doesn't use a broken magic. He doesn't have any form of special bloodline. He just seems to be very talented and capable. And he just combined magic with his martial arts style, and he's just able to become a very capable wizard for that. But he doesn't seem to be one of those people and type of person to want to climb the ranks. He just seems to just go about and enjoy stuff, and he just gets stronger naturally. Juvia seems like that in a lot of ways. She does train, and there is still obviously a degree of her wanting to do stuff with other people, wanting to be able to keep up with characters relevancy wise. But it seems like Juvia is just, like, that's not her main goal. Like, Juvia just seems to be like, she does it casually, but she's not like focused on it. So I'm happy to see where she's going to be in this fight, and it's obviously also more believable, I think, for Juvia, Mirajane, Elfman, and Gajil to take on these fights than most of the SACE members, because again, the SACE members are not nobodies. All of them, even Racer, at the end of the day, is more powerful and more capable and more talented than the average wizard. All of the SACE members were handpicked by Brain and Zero specifically, so they are all going to be special in some way, shape, or form. You can compare them to other characters and they might not be the same level of hype, but still in the general sense of the verse, they are. So Juvia is, though, at the same time, we know that from Juvia, S-class potential. We know that from Merity fight as well. We know that from when Gray turned into Juvia, and clearly Juvia was still very powerful. It's not like it was, she just attacks didn't do anything. As well as in fights where she teams up with Gray, it's not like, Gray's a 99 and she's a 1. Clearly, when their powers fuse, there's a significant enough jump in strength when they fought Metro. So there's enough in there for Juvia. It's just that Juvia isn't one of those characters who's like, I'm gonna go out and train, I'm gonna try and prove myself. She's just like, she does effort, but at the same time, she's like, I got other stuff going on. I got other things going on. I'm trying to live life. But Juvia showing up here, I think, is really cool. I can't wait to see what all of their new things are. I will say, Juvia's outfit looks great. Juvia wearing this cool, I don't know exactly what kind of style dress that is, but it does look really good. I'm so happy, I will say, that her butterfly hat is back. This was my favorite Juvia hat. It's slightly different than the one we got during the Grand Magic Games, but it is by far my favorite Juvia hat with the butterfly on it. We've not had it for like a decade, so I'm pretty stoked to see it just on screen. Elfman versus Gaia. It's hard for me to say which of these fights I'm most hyped for, because Elfman versus Gaia was one that I was hoping would happen. It was either going to be Elfman or Gajil, but this is going to be a straight brute force fight. Elfman getting a one-on-one fight is, that one is crazy to me. That one is so crazy to me because Elfman has not had a proper fight since Bacchus. He has not had a proper fight since Bacchus. You look at Tartaros, you look at Alvarez, they weren't really Elfman kind of like, yeah, we're going to give him a battle and we're going to focus on him. This is like a chapter that you would consider one of his chapters. I don't need a 2-chapter fight from this. I would be perfectly fine if we got just one really cool. I want back and forth. So maybe like a chapter and a half. Or maybe we get a third of a chapter of seeing with them and then one of the other fights, and then a third of a chapter where we see some of him doing stuff. And then he gets his own chapter where it's a little over a chapter and a half, but 2 chunks of that is split between other chapters, but we get the focus chapter when he wins. I really hope my main thing is I really hope to see, I have 2 things with Elfman. I want to get a new Elfman Ultimate form. And I'd be cool too if Elfman just got Beast King, but it was as big as it was in the anime where he's just gigantic. And I would say 2, because I want this too. I want him to say he was training with Wolfheim. I've been wanting that to be a whole thing where he goes and he's training with this guy who's one of the strongest wizards on the continent, and he also seemingly uses Beast Soul takeover magic. So Elfman, go talk to him. Mirajane, I don't even need to talk about Mirajane. I don't even need to talk about Mirajane. I know 99% of the fandom is going to be excited about Mirajane. This is still going to put her nowhere near Gray, but Mirajane, for one, Mirajane getting a fight here, I'm not too surprised. I felt like it would have made no sense that not have Mirajane fight. She was the one out of all of them. Her and Gray were the 2 members of Fairy Tail. It's I didn't see not being involved in this whole black magic demon thing, because out of all of them, she is the most needed in terms of we need her to get more boosts, because Mirajane One, I think we should get the explanation that even though Zareth died, she still has Sayla's soul. Sayla and Allegria is different, but Sayla's soul, because I think that after the point even that she absorbed the soul specifically, the connection to Zareth went over to her, and at that point, that way when she defeats Angel, she can or not Angel, when she aids Angel defeating Damon, she can have Damon's form and she can absorb that as well. Her design looks really cool. It looks like her hair got longer too. I'm actually very curious of that. Is her hair just got longer? Is she like, did the three of them go train or something? Because all of them also showed up with new outfits, which is really cool. And on top of that, all of them are very confident. They all are kind of like just flexing on their opponent in terms of like presence. Gotta get to the end of the chapter, obviously. Gajeel looks incredible. Gajeel looks so cool. And this is one of the things that's like, I feel like they trained a little bit. Gajeel looks a little bigger. He just looks a little bit beefier. I'm pretty sure, like, off the top of my head, I cannot remember if some of his scars were still there. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to go back and double check. His outfit looks awesome. This is, like, probably the... If you gave him the headband, I think the only thing that's missing is maybe a headband. But this is probably Gajo's coolest outfit. I think just, like, the simplicity of the general outfit... It's got, you know, it's got his boots. I think the vest thing is pretty sick. Maybe borrowed that from Sting. But these metal gauntlets look sick on him. They look so cool. I'm so happy to see that. But yeah, this chapter was dope. I can't wait to see where this, like, these fights and where they go in the next bits. You know, obviously, I'm going to assume that these are going to go in order, where we're going to get Juvia, Elfman, Mirajane, and then Gajo. That's probably the hype that people want as well. Well, probably people would want Elfman first, because I would imagine Elfman doesn't have as many hyped fans as Juvia, but I think Elfman deserves it more because, I mean, Juvia has... I would have to go back and see how much content Juvia has in the series versus Elfman, but I'm willing to bet that Elfman does not have as much content in the series as Juvia. So it's like, let this man get a moment. Elfman needs it. Elfman needs a cool moment. I'm so hyped for these next fights, because the last couple have been cool. I like seeing the SACE members get moments and get content in the series, but I'm so ready to see these members of Fairy Tail get moments that they've deserved for a long time, because I've personally felt like some of them, like Gajo's had cool moments, Elfman's had cool moments somewhat, but still it's like I need them to really kind of shine, and this is where it's gonna happen. Anyway, other than that, I'd love to hear what everyone has to say about this chapter below. You know, were you happy with this result? I'm just happy. One thing, I'm happy in a lot of areas, but I'm happy that one Midnight didn't beat Zero. If Gajeel does it, I'm not going to complain. So one, I bet that fight's going to be sick, but it's a character that I think deserves to be able to take that level of placement. Because one thing too, Gajeel would be able to really sit a lot higher, because it's not crazy just off of just the one thing. But I mean, Zero being able to shatter Urza's based armor with just like a starting no-named attack punch, like that by itself is gonna like really help Gajeel kind of boost up, because like he's had scaling of where he should be at, but he hasn't had like any new things in a long time since last time he got just slapped around by God Serena. So now we're gonna really see him go out there and press pressure. But anyway, other than that, I like to hear what you guys have to say as well, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.